Hey guys, Kirk here from Kirk's Aquariums, bringing you guys yet another episode. Today's episode, I actually want to do how to keep your cories nice and healthy and success with keeping Corydoras. So stay tuned guys, and thanks for watching. Alrighty, so you want Corydoras, you've never had Corydoras before, or maybe you have but you haven't had much success with them. Corydoras, in my opinion, are one of my most favourite types of fish. They are very underrated fish and usually looked at in the wrong ways as far as I'm concerned. Corydoras have got to have one of the best personalities when you buy them in a group. A lot of people that fail with Corydoras usually fail because they only buy one or two of them at a time. In my experience, Corydoras, you need to buy at least 6 at a time, and the more you have, honestly, the better they'll do. They love being in really big schools of the same species. So if you're buying panda Corydoras or albino Corydoras, don't buy one panda, one albino, one bronze. That ain't gonna work for you very well. What you need to do is you need to buy 6 albino cories or 6 panda cories minimum. I mean, some people have smaller tanks and they still want Corydoras and try and get away with 3. Sometimes it works, but I feel like you're really missing out on the true character of that fish when you're only buying 3. When you have 6 or more, you start getting a much better schooling behaviour, and it's really cool because you get like this nice schooling effect going along the bottom of your fish tank, and it's something very different from what usually you're seeing with like neon tetras and guppies and stuff that usually hang up along the mid and the top section of your fish tank. While that looks cool in a school as well, having something along the bottom also looks really cool when you have it in school. Especially like a cory, like if you have a really dark substrate, getting yourself like 6 or more albino cories. They are really cheap, easy beginner fish, yet that'll make your substrate and the bottom half of your tank really pop and look good, and people will be all over the place like this, seeing all your tanks from your floating mid-range sort of fish all the way down to your bottom substrate, and there's still plenty of action going on for someone to look at. So I really recommend, first tip, keeping Corydoras, definitely buy them in numbers. 6 or more minimum, personally. So, tip number 1. Tip number 2 with Corydoras, when you buy Corydoras, usually for the most part, they're going to be quite skinny and scrawny from wholesalers and from being kept in fish shops. The best thing you can do is when you're buying them in groups, get them a good, solid diet food. So what you want is something like live blackworms, frozen bloodworms, a good sinking pellet or a good sinking wafer designed for bottom feeders. That'll be a really good start. And you just want to really make sure that when you're in the quarantining section of them, that you make sure you have them getting a good amount of food. That is going to ensure a good success rate when you have Corydoras. A lot of the times people don't feed them enough and sort of treat them as like a cleanup fish, if you will. And a lot of the times the poor cories just never get a good feed, and they end up just dying due to lack of food. So getting a good amount of food in your cories at a young age and when you first get them and all the way through their life will ensure them nice and chunky, grow really good, and keep nice and healthy for you. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 will be basically what food to feed your cories. Now, cories typically aren't picky eaters. They're not terribly fussy whatsoever when it comes to food. There are certain foods that you can feed that the cories are definitely going to favour over some other foods. But for the most part, cories will just about eat anything as long as it actually has a chance to get down to the cories. So flake food typically usually gets eaten by your other fish before any of it really makes it down to the cories. So if you've got them in a community tank and you're feeding flake food, really try and throw a fair bit in there so that the cories get some. But I would prefer really to have another sort of type of food on top of the flake food that's more dedicated to sink really quickly and get down to the cories so they actually get a bite. So one of those ones is something like this, like a bottom sort of feeding pellet, usually pretty good for like loaches, clown loaches, all that type of stuff. Corydoras really like it. The odd protein-eating pleco really goes on these ones as well. But these are a good one. They're usually mostly like krill and like fish meal and stuff like that. And they've got some spirulina and stuff like that in them as well. So a good overall food to feed your fish. especially your cories. Another one is basically like frozen bloodworms, or another really good one is anything like, I should say, frozen bloodworms is a good one, and that's going to get down as long as you get enough down there. So a lot of your other fish, again, if you've got them in a community tank, which most people are going to have them in, frozen bloodworms, feeding them is going to float on the surface unless you've thawed them out already yourself. Most of your other fish are going to eat them before the cories get to eat them. So try and, again, pop a few more cubes in there if you're feeding frozen bloodworms in a community tank. That'll just help ensure that at least the cories that you've got down the bottom are going to get some of that food. So again, bloodworms, really, really good food for them. Another one is live blackworms. That is honestly my favourite food, feeding Corydoras. Seeing them eat live blackworms and watching them like slurp it up like it's spaghetti is honestly one of the funniest things, and honestly one of the highlights of my mornings when I feed my fish room. It's a really high protein based food. They really, really enjoy it. It puts a lot of weight on them. It usually triggers breeding, mainly because it really fattens up the female and gets her conditioned, ready to lay some eggs. It's a little bit more expensive than something like a dry food, but you know, typically live blackworms, there is a bit of a risk when you're feeding live foods that it might carry some disease, but it's like the same with a frozen bloodworm kind of thing. The risk is relatively low, so as long as you've quarantined them prior, like when you first buy your cories, again, you really should be quarantining them before you put them in your community tank. It's just going to ensure that, one, they get enough weight on them early on, and two, it's just going to make sure that if they had like a disease or worms or parasites, it's not going to put it into your nice community tank. So quarantining them is another good one, and allows you to put some really good weight on them at the same time. So those foods, again, quick little recap: flake, pellet food, nice food. Got to feed pretty heavy if you've got a community tank though, because you're not going to get much of it down to the cories. If you've got a lot of aggressive eaters like rainbows and angels and tetras and stuff, they're going to get most of it before the cories do. Frozen foods like your bloodworm, frozen cyclops works as well. Frozen brine shrimp as well, if it can get down to them. All that is going to be really, really good. They're really, really going to benefit off that. And the last one is live foods. So things like your live blackworms, really, really prefer that. They're going to enjoy it. You're going to enjoy watching them eat it. It's just going to be an all-round good time for you and your fish. So that's pretty much tip number 3, sort of what food to feed your cories. And we'll get on to tip 4. Alright, so tip number 4 is honestly water quality. That's going to go about everything, sort of like pH and temperature and everything like that. Most of your cories are really, really tolerable on the pH scale. They'll go from as down as like 6 sort of thing, all the way up to like 7, 8. So they're pretty, you know, as long as you've got a stable pH and it's not swinging either way heaps, they're going to do fine in that kind of pH range. So pH wise, pretty good. Temperature, most of them pretty flexible. Kind of, again, we want to do most of your strains of cories are going to, you know, just be happy at 24, 26 degrees. Fahrenheit, I can't remember exactly what that is in Fahrenheit. We use Celsius here in Australia. 24, 26 degrees most of the time for your cories. For the most of them, they're going to do fine in that. Again, stable temperatures, stable pH. For the most part, most of your cories are going to do quite fine in that range. As long as it's stable and as long as you're in that kind of range, you're going to have fine. Alright, the last one, tip number 5. Basically, what sort of other fish you can have with cories is going to be a big determining factor on their success. You do not want to have big aggressive fish with your Corydoras, especially your albino cories, because they stand out a lot. If you have a big fish in with little small cories and they're like sticking out a lot, they're going to be easy fish food and they're not going to enjoy their life. You want fish that are more community sort of friendly, fish that aren't going to bother the cories. The cories themselves, Corydoras themselves, are actually a really, really peaceful fish. I'm yet to see an aggressive Corydora in all the cories that I've kept and am keeping. Still yet to see an aggressive cory attack other fish. They will eat like a dead body, like if another fish dies or something like that. Cories are a bit of a scavengers type fish, so they will take opportunities when they can. And so a lot of people sometimes think that the cory killed the fish. usually, definitely from what I've seen, cories are just cleaning up the leftovers basically of a fish passing or another fish killing that fish. So it's not usually the cory that actually does the damage. The cory just gets blamed for it because they're the one eating the body when someone finds out. So Corydoras really go well with tetras, go amazing in a planted tank, go amazing with rainbow fish as long as you can get enough food down there for them. They go really, really well with angelfish. Most fish are going to go really, really well with the cories as long as they're not aggressive to the Corydora themselves. And nothing that's going to pick on the cories or chase them or something like that. It's just going to ensure that the cories aren't stressed, and you're going to have much more success. They're going to feel more safe and stuff. They're going to be out and about in their school. You're going to see them going along your fish tank like this, along the bottom. It's going to be a good time. So don't put big fish in there with your cories. Keep them with your community sort of style fish, like your angels. They'll go like with your betters as well. They'll go with a lot of different fish. Like honestly, they'll just about go with anything as long as that fish doesn't be aggressive to the cory. They're gonna get along just fine. So that's tip number 5. I'll wrap it up there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's something different. It's something I haven't done before, but I really want to sort of do different fish now and give you guys some tips and tricks on keeping successfully, different types of fish. So I thought the Corydoras is a good one. Corydoras are really popular at the moment, especially where I'm from. Like a lot of people just fall in love with cories. There's a lot of different strains. You can get some really nice pygmy cories that stay really, really small. I recommend them for nano tanks. Really, really nice. You can still get a big school of them, but they're not going to take up much space because they're real pygmy cories. Then you can get all the way up to like your big emerald cories, your emerald green cories. They get like that sort of size. They're pretty chunky in big tanks. They look good in schools. But then you've got, your still more popular ones are the ones like your pandas, the sturbe cories. The albinos are a really popular cory, even though they're still a cheaper cory or considered the cheaper cory. They're a really popular cory because they look good in numbers. They look good on a dark substrate in a planted background. Pretty much any cory that you get looks really good. You can get black Venezuelan cories, you can get orange Venezuelan cories, you can get gold laser cories, really, really cool species as well. But just the amount of different strains of cories is amazing. And if you haven't kept cories before, I hope this video is giving you a bit of an insight into them. And just enjoy your Corydoras. Just make sure you get them in numbers and make sure they get a good feed and make sure the water quality is all good. And you're going to have a lot of success and a lot of enjoyment out of them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys learned something. If you like this video and you like the kind of videos I'm doing, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Helps me out a lot. And if you like this video, give that video a thumbs up. So anyway guys, I'll leave it there and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.